I wake up in the morning and the alarm gives out a warning, I don't think I'll ever make it on time. By the time I grab my books and I give myself a look, I'm at the corner just in time to see the bus fly by. It's alright, 'cause I'm safe out the bell. If the teacher pops a test, I know I'm in a mess, and my dog ate all my homework last night. Riding low in my chair, she won't know that I'm there. If I can hand it in tomorrow, it'll be alright. It's alright, 'cause I'm safe out the bell. It's alright, 'cause I'm safe by the. It's alright, 'cause I'm safe by the. It's alright, 'cause I'm safe by the bell.
Let's hear it for the cheesiest video of all time. Nice. Who just is taken right back to junior high by that video right there? Oh my goodness. I thought about like pulling out the big 80s cell phone, you know, the Zach Morris cell phone that's like 2 feet tall. This is the second week of Throwback. We're all about looking at our past to understand our present, understand who we are, and to be able to move into the future and to create even a better future than we've experienced in the past. Last week, Aaron kicked us off. Didn't Aaron do a great job the last, actually 2 weeks? He's serving in kids today. I'm so thankful for that guy. Isn't he, seriously, isn't he one of the most talented young guys you've ever seen in ministry? I love that guy. I'm so proud of him. And you got to be careful. In church, you don't want to do too good of a job because you'll get roped into doing it more. You know, that's like the church rule. So he's doing that to himself. He's going to be speaking more often now because he's doing such a great job. But I want to thank you, or thank him for that. And last week he told you that, yes, we're looking at our own past in this series, but we're finding ourselves in some very ancient stories. The stories of our spiritual ancestors. They're called the patriarchs and matriarchs of Genesis. And so we're going back and looking at Abraham and Sarah and their son Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and then next week Jacob and Rachel, and then Joseph. And these stories are about figures who, if they were historical, they lived something like 3,000 years ago in a completely different time. I mean, we're entering a foreign world in a few minutes when we read a scripture together. And so people are like, well, how could this ever be relevant to me? Like, how could this ever have anything to do with you know what I'm saying? Like when you read the Bible, it requires interpretation, unlike what some people think in our society. But the strange thing is that when we read these stories, it appears as though human nature and the human experience has not changed a whole lot. And even though we're reading about desert dwellers well, we're desert dwellers too, let's be honest, but they're on the other side of the planet in a different time. We just don't have as many camels as they did. We strangely find ourselves in these stories. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, I can identify with what I'm reading here, and this actually gives me insight into something that I'm facing right now in my life. And so we're going to explore our past as we explore theirs in Throwback, and then we're going to be able to create a better future together. Okay, I've missed the last 2 Sundays, and there's some new people here that I haven't even met yet, and I'm looking forward to meeting you after the service. And I spent about 3 days, I think, in San Diego. Went to see a buddy out there, stayed with him, and played a lot of golf. And then went to Ohio and spoke in our sponsor church this past Sunday. Had a great experience there. The weather in Ohio was actually better than San Diego, believe it or not. It was like cloudy and rainy in San Diego the whole time. But I stopped in Gila Bend on the way to San Diego, like at the Love's gas station, like you do. Everybody, you have to stop at the Love's gas station there where Gila Bend, you know, connects with the 8. And as I was pulling out, after a couple of impulse buys, you know, in the gas station, I saw this. Can anybody tell me what that is? Just give me feedback. What is it?
It's a Tesla charging station.
It's a Tesla, exactly right, man. Tesla charging station. There were several of them. So like close to the gas pumps, you had several of these, and they're tall, like that's just the very top of it. A Tesla charging station. So you know something about Tesla cars then, if you know what that is. Tesla's the car company started by Elon Musk, who's also like getting into space exploration, and just this guy's changing the world by himself. But Tesla makes high-performance luxury cars. And the thing about Tesla is they're all, what are they? Electric. They're totally electric cars. And so what's the stereotype of an electric car? That's kind of like slow and lumbering, or it doesn't accelerate, it's just, you can't fuel up anywhere. And so Elon Musk knows this, and Tesla is like destroying these stereotypes about Tesla cars. So they have a new 2015 model. It's their sport model, and this model has a standard mode, like on the dash, you can just control it with buttons. Standard mode and insane mode. And if you push the insane button, you stomp on the accelerator. I was going to say the gas, but it's not gas. You stomp on the accelerator, it does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. If you know anything about cars, that is just like astoundingly fast. It's the 10th fastest production car in existence. Only 2 of those are street legal. And so I've got a video of like these people who didn't know about this, and they're sitting in the passenger seat, and it's a silent video. You can start playing it. So Tesla, obviously they've looked at the past, because a Tesla car looks like a gas-powered car. It looks like what you think of being a car. So they looked at the past, but they're not staying there. Tesla's looking to the past because they're doing something really cool in the future. That's the car of the future right there. There's no doubt about it, which is really sweet, right? That's like really good news. Unfortunately, that particular model right now will set you back about 120 grand. So it needs to come down a little bit before us, normal folks can afford that. But they're reinventing the car, looking to the past in order to move forward. Now, how happy is the oil and gas industry about Tesla? There's been quite a bit of political wrangling. So if you make gasoline-powered cars, it's painful to watch that video, because you realize, oh man, we're getting left in the past. Because Tesla's looking at the past, but they're moving forward. When you look at your past, what do you do with it? When you look at experiences that you've had, people that you've known, what do you do with your past? That's a question that we don't think about very often, do we? I mean, we're all busy. We a lot of us just have our heads down, and we're just kind of, nose to the grindstone getting through life. And we don't necessarily have a lot of time to reflect about our past, but how about this? If I could see a video of your life, or you could see a video of mine, it'll all be the same. Everything you think, everything you do, all of your habits, all of the things that make you who you are. Let's put me on the spot. Let's say you go watch a video of my life. You would be able to see where all of those things come from. Do you know what I'm saying? My mannerisms, my appearance, the way I think about life, the way I react when I face setbacks. You would be able to see, that scene back when you were 11. You did the same thing then, Ryan. Like, there's a pattern here. You would be able to see, like, oh my word, Ryan is like made up of his past. Have you ever thought about it like that? Like, everything I do, everything I think, I've learned somewhere. The same is true of you. Our past makes us who we are. Either got it from nature or nurture, one way or the other. And so we react to that in different ways. Some of us just don't know that. We're just completely oblivious to it. And we go throughout life kind of blinded to how our past has influenced us. And every once in a while you have those aha moments, and some of them can be really painful. Like, you find yourself in marital counseling. And you're like, and that's a good thing, by the way. I think it's brave when people do that. But they're like, oh my gosh, I am my mother, right? And you're like, you have this light bulb that goes on, this insight. For the first time, I realized, that's how my past has totally influenced who I am right now. And I was making assumptions I wasn't even aware of because I made them in the past, and that's how I learned. But now, oh my gosh, and this light bulb goes on when we realize how much the past has affected. So maybe you're blind to the past. Some of us are stuck in the pain of the past. And we're facing things that, that are painful to us, ways of thinking about ourselves, maybe patterns of behavior. And it's been that way for a long time, and we can actually pinpoint to when it started, and we were hurt very, very deeply. Is that true of you? And in some way, it's kind of like, man, and that I've grown in lots of areas of my life, but in some ways, man, I'm like right back there 15 years ago or whatever it was. And it's sometimes I think I've gotten past it, but I haven't. Is that you? Some of us are stuck in the past. Some of us look back at our past as the glory days because we feel like life was better back then, so it's like spring glory days, they'll pass you by, like the guy who peaked in high school. And so like, man, I just remember Uncle Rico and Napoleon Dynamite, poor guy, like life is all in the past. And so Some people, and that's really sad because they just, there's nothing to look forward to. They're stuck in the past, but in a different way because they thought it was better than the present. We're watching our country go through this right now with the Confederate flag, aren't we? That's all about the past and whether we're willing to move on or not from some past supposed glory days in some people's minds. But what we want to do is look back at the past so we can understand who we are in the present and create a better future. So I want to ask you some questions. They'll be on the screen. What were the most influential events in your past? This is totally a reflective message today. If you tune me out the rest of the time and you're kind of reflecting on these things, that'd probably be a success. But what were the most influential events in your past? What happened to you that's made you who you are? Could be positive, could be negative. What is it for you? Most influential events in your past? Who are the most influential people in your past? Again, could be people who were awesome and great influences on you, or maybe they caused you a lot of pain. Who are the most influential people? What do they look like? What are their names? And then for those events and those people, what trajectory did those events and people set you on? By trajectory, I mean like my 4-year-old has a little foam glider with a rubber band on it, and you hold the glider and you let the rubber band go, and of course where you aim it, it's not guaranteed that's where it's going to land, right? But you're setting it on a trajectory. So if he aims it this way, it's generally going to go over there. So let's say, this, straight ahead is the goal. And did somebody say something to you in your past that cut you so deeply that it just, instead of sending you on this trajectory towards a good thing in your life, a healthy thing, it just was like way over here. And now you find yourself trying to meander back to this center line, whatever health and goodness looks like in your life. And you realize, man, I've really had to steer a long way, long road out of hell, so to speak, because of this person or this event to get back to the center line. Maybe there were people who really, they were great in your life and they just fired you straight ahead, but it's like we've got all these different things that we're trying to deal with in different directions and steer back to this center line. And what were those events and those people for you? Parents are, a lot of people think it's psychological mumbo jumbo. A lot of times that's just denial. That's what that looks like. But parents are the most powerful figures to set our trajectory. If you had a father who kind of fired you this way, was not there for you or emotionally abusive to you, man, it's gonna be a long journey to navigate back to center. If you had that mentor, that teacher, school teacher in your life that fired you in a good direction, man, that really helps, and that can help you in those other areas to get back on center again. You know what I mean? Or it could be the loss of a loved one, and that really threw you for a loop. It could be a crisis of faith for a lot of us here. And you're still trying to steer back to what's true, what is even real now. Like I feel like maybe some people lied to me earlier in my life, and they sent me off. I don't know if it's a good trajectory or not, but now I'm trying to find out where the center line is. Or if you felt alone, maybe some friends, you didn't have the friends you wanted, or you didn't excel and get the recognition you wanted, man, it can really send you off in all kinds of different trajectories. What were those events and those people in your life? I hope that throughout the message today, you'll be thinking of those and make it real for you. And this could go on for, you can ruminate on these things for a really long time. And so let's think about those events and people today, okay? We're going to look at the story of Isaac and Rebekah and see how their story can inform our story. Isaac has an odd relationship with his father, Abraham. We're going to read about that in a moment. And Isaac has to navigate through life after this painful experience with his father that, it's mysterious, but had to send him off on a certain trajectory. Isaac also repeats some mistakes of his father. And then his wife, Rebekah, comes into his life and shows him what it means to live with character and how maybe he can get back to center in his life. So these people, again, are in the book of Genesis. They're essentially Bedouins. Abraham's a Bedouin sheik. Right? And so this is a completely different time and place. It's foreign to 2015 Chandler, right? Different assumptions, different cultural assumptions that they took for granted from ours. But we're going to be able to find ourselves in some incredible ways in this story. A couple of just little tidbits. Isaac lives to be 180 years old, right? That's some pretty good, like essential oils or something, right? That are extending somebody's life to that. So we have these kind of epic, would you agree, kind of epic ages and stories and kind of legendized kinds of accounts of these people's lives? That's just a question that a lot of times people ask. They're kind of like folk heroes that tell the origin story of the Jewish people, and Christians, Muslims, and Jews trace their ancestry to Abraham. Isaac was born when Abraham was 100 years old. Sarah was 90 or 91, so it's a miraculous birth after they were not able to conceive, and there are people who struggle with infertility in our culture. They're like, well, geez, now what do I make of that? You see what I'm saying? Different culture, different time, different assumptions. But Isaac was the golden child, the child they waited for so many years. And but this event happens in his life that could definitely send him off on a trajectory in a direction he doesn't want to go. And so we're going to read about that in Genesis 22. I'm going to read the entire story. Believe me, it'll keep your attention. Trust me. We're going to read the story out of Scripture. And then just one more thing I want to say before we read it. We don't know exactly how old Isaac was when this happens. A lot of times people read the story and they assume he's a child. He wasn't well, we don't know. The Jewish rabbis, the ancient rabbis, suggested perhaps he was 37 years old. So that'll make a really big difference when we read the story. It is a big difference, but it's not big enough to make this totally normal, okay? And you're going to see what we mean. So first of all, if we're going to find ourselves in Isaac's story, we have to embrace our past, all right? And here's something that happened in Isaac's past. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah." What? "Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Isn't the Bible easy to interpret? People who are just like, oh, I just open the Bible and read it and do what it says. We believe the Bible, right? Well, I hope not all the time. That's your take on every passage you read. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey, while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." We will come back to you, he says. So Abraham is doing this act that we don't understand, and he still believes that we will come back, meaning his son Isaac too. Abraham took wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. When you read the Bible, are you able to picture things realistically and not just go into, oh, the Bible says it mode, so I'm just going to accept everything without question mode? Are you able to picture this realistically? And it gets more and more disturbing, correct? Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Thankfully, verse 11 comes along. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." So does that raise a couple of questions about the Bible? Okay, so God commanded this act, Abraham almost goes through with it. God stops him. God rewards him for what has happened here. And we see that the whole system of sacrifice in the ancient world is like tit for tat. It's like if I give the gods a little bit of something, they'll give me a lot of something. So after this passage, and you see the promise here, but then after this passage, we have a list of some babies who are born. So the idea is Abraham has been willing to offer his son, therefore God gives him more kids. It's a completely different time and place, isn't it? I hope, and one of the reasons this church exists, is that we can engage with stories like this as like normal thinking people. And we can understand this is a different culture. There was child sacrifice practiced at different times and places in this culture. To us, can we go ahead and say, this is abhorrent and crazy? Can we say that? Okay. Whew, that's good. That's good that we can say that. Because, you know, picture this happening like you look at your Facebook news feed, and there was there's a news story, a link to a news story in Chandler on Friday, and somebody did this to their kid. Whether it's a child or 37 years old, picture that that's the actual story that happened here today. So like the son's like, yeah, my dad almost killed me with a knife, but he sacrificed a dog instead. Whew. And you're like, that's time to go to the hospital, right? So let's just get that out in the open. This is a church where we can say that. This is not something that is normal in our culture. This is institutionalized kind of behavior that's going on here. But Abraham is rewarded for this obedience. So there are people who are just raised with the view of the Bible that God dictated the Bible, and this causes problems for people who want to think that. One more thing I want to say, because I feel partly responsible when I read passages like this. I absolutely detest child abuse. I've said before things like, I didn't have the greatest childhood. I didn't have the greatest experience as a child. That's a way of me softening and saying certain things about my childhood. And so I detest child abuse. And you say, well, there are people who will read this and they know they're not going to ever do this. Well, last year in Florida, there was a mom, Kimberly Dawn Lucas, who went to a church where she heard a sermon on the binding of Isaac. That's what this is called. And she had a 2-year-old stepdaughter. And I don't need to finish the story, do I? Right? So when the cops were investigating afterwards, they found a note on her computer that said, the pastor's sermon really, really touched me yesterday, but God never told me to stop. So we're in a place in our faith where we need to be responsible with the Bible and stories like this and how we interpret them. Can I get an amen for that? All right? So the Jewish rabbis have struggled with this for centuries because of the obvious questions that it raises. But, for example, they speculated that Isaac was 37, which makes him a willing participant in this, but it's still scarring, a terrible experience. The rabbis speculated that Isaac's mother, Sarah, died soon after this because of the trauma of hearing about this event, that she couldn't take it anymore. And so that's what some of the rabbis have said over the centuries about this experience. This was something that was a part of Isaac's past, and certainly it would stay with a person. All right, we're all together on that. So I went to San Diego for 3 days, and then Ohio for a few days after that. And our sponsor church was really, really excited about what I had to share with them. They're really receptive, and they're definitely on board with us. Their name is a church in Aurora, because they're a church in Aurora, Ohio. And they were really happy about one church. And so I just thought I would share a little bit about my experience from real life. My wife and I both were raised by conservative Christian families, mine more fundamentalist than hers. Her parents are pretty rational, moderate people, but we have a lot of other people in our family that, think a lot differently than we do. So a family member picked me up at the airport, and within a half an hour was asking me questions like, do you really believe the Bible? Ryan, is the Bible the Word of God to you? Because apparently they watched some YouTube. So the Supreme Court decision just happened right before we went to Ohio. And they're having a very, very difficult time dealing with that. And so that kind of set the tone for my weekend in Ohio, not with the sponsor church, but just with family. And then a family member invited my wife, Hannah, out to coffee. And she discovered that the reason they had invited her to coffee was to express their concern. And so the family member, I mean, this is emotional to me. The family member started crying and told my wife she's crying because she's concerned for our son, because of the way we're raising him. Right? And so, you know, I'm not the only person with those kinds of experiences. Many of you could tell similar, and you know, this is a journey I've been on just for the past couple of years. Some of you have been on this journey for way longer than that. And you felt the pain of family conflict that has left its mark on you, and it is a part of your past. In this particular issue, for many people here, it doesn't have to be this particular issue. Lots of ways. It could be a million different things. Again, it may not be something that's religious or theological. It could be all kinds of things where you have this pain in your past, and it could be a breakup. It could be, you know, it could be a disappointment, some kind of a loss, the way you felt about your appearance. I mean, all kinds of things where you have this painful memory in your past, and it's tempting to run away from those things. But like Isaac, we're faced with this conundrum where it's like, I want to run from the pain. That's what my brain tells me to do. Don't put your hand on the hot stove burner again. But if you run, it never goes away. And so like Isaac, we have to embrace our past. And ironically, when we don't embrace it, it keeps coming back more powerfully. It's like when I think I've runned is what I was just about to say. English grammar. Okay. When I think I've run away from it, I really haven't, it keeps coming back. That's actually a sign that I haven't dealt with it enough, the pain of the past. So ironically, when I actually do embrace my past and the pain of it, whatever that is for you, events, people, whoever it is you have in mind, ironically, when I embrace it, it can finally stay in the past. How does that happen? You have to embrace your past, which is a process of grieving. And that's just kind of a bummer, isn't it? Embracing your past involves a process of grieving. Some of us, I know, are grieving right now, the loss of a loved one. I know some are dealing with kind of sick relatives, so you're dealing with death, grief right now. But again, we grieve all kinds of losses. Lost job, lost, opportunity, disappointment over something that you feel like you've lost, lost relationship. And so embracing your past looks like grief. Who here has seen the Disney movie Inside Out? Oh, isn't it a great movie? Am I wrong? Oh my goodness, what an amazing. Who here, before I talk about it, who here is planning on seeing it? Oh, bummer. Can you guys leave for 5 minutes and come back? I don't think I'm giving you a spoiler. I'm trying not to. I don't think I'm spoiling the movie by what I'm about to say. This isn't totally plot related. It's kind of an undertone. I feel really bad. Maybe I am spoiling it. I don't want to. Well, anyway, it's such an amazing movie. It's about this little girl named Riley who's 11 years old. And it's one of those movies, too, you're not going to stop crying. You have to know that when you go in. My goal was just don't make loud sounds when I cry. That was my, I can't stop this. It's just don't go, don't do that. Don't audibly cry. That was my goal. But this little girl, 11 years old, all the emotions in her life, it's a zoomed in look at her emotional life. And of course, there's joy. And anger is the red guy with fire that comes out of his head, right? And then disgust is another one. And then there's sadness, this little blue girl named Sadness. And the movie kind of goes back and forth in the beginning about between joy and sadness. And each one of her memories is a little kind of like crystal ball. Every memory she has that comes into their headquarters. And if sadness touches the memory, it turns blue. And it makes that memory sad, and it's irreversible. And so all of these emotions, and definitely joy, who's this awesome character, they're trying to prevent sadness from touching a memory. It's all about, they keep sadness in her place. They won't let her move. They kind of imprison sadness, pretending that all of life is joyful. And of course they have good intentions because they love Riley and they want her to be happy, like we want for our own children and you want for yourself, like pretending that, oh, there's no sadness here. Don't let sadness touch anything. And you can imagine now as the movie progresses, there's a realization that we have to be open to sadness touching our lives. Oh my gosh, it's like, I gotta stop it right now. And let's pause for a drink. And it's about grief and how that's a part of maturity and it's a part of moving on in life. So what in your events or in those influential people in your lives, what do you have to grieve? Now again, you're thinking of some great events and some awesome people in your life, but what are the things that you have to grieve in your past? We embrace the past, and that looks like grieving. Well, after I got back, I had a good conversation with my wife, and she and I got the chance to talk about this weekend and how it was just emotionally draining. And she said some things that reminded me of how you really get past the past and you move on to the future. And I'll share about that in a minute, but it reminded me of Rebekah and the role that she plays in Isaac's life. So after the binding of Isaac's mother, Sarah, passes away. And then Abraham in his old age wants to find a wife for his son Isaac. It was a time of arranged marriage, so he calls his most trusted senior servant. And he says, I want you to find a wife for Isaac. I want you to go back to where I'm from and find a wife for Isaac. Now there's this amazing thing. This won't be on the screen. I'm just going to read it to you. It's just phenomenal. Abraham was now very old and the Lord had blessed him in every way. He said to the senior servant in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. Like you do when you have a friend that you're asking a favor to. Here's the thing, thigh is a euphemism. In the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament is full of euphemisms where they say this, but they really mean that. So this is he wants his servant to promise him that he'll get a wife for his son so he can have descendants. So what part of his body did he really want his servant to put his hand under? Do I need to elaborate more than this? It wasn't his thigh. So, don't try that on your friends and neighbors this week. They'll be, tell me you've been drinking, please. So he says to his servant, put your hand under and promise me. All right? Different time, different place. I just read the Bible and do what it says, right? Okay, buddy, whatever. Do you believe the Bible, Ryan? Then, okay. So So he puts his hand under his thigh and makes him this promise. So his servant takes off to this distant land where Abraham, isn't this stuff great? Oh my word. Off to this distant land. And the servant is really nervous. This is a big deal here. And he prays for guidance for this wife, for Isaac. And it's called an oracle in the ancient world. It's looking for a sign. And he prays to God, okay, I'm traveling with my camels, our entourage here. Abraham's a rich man. We've got an envoy here. I'm going to stop at the well. This is the desert. We kind of get this, the ancient Middle East. It's, water is the most important thing. I'm going to stop at a well. In the ancient world, unfortunately, it was the role of women always to go to the well and get the water. It was hard work. And so he knows he's going to encounter women here at this well. And he says, he knows that just by the hospitality codes that Aaron talked about last week, these ladies are going to offer me a drink, because that's what you do in the desert. He said, but God, I'm going to pray something that's impossible. I'll know that it's Isaac's future wife when she not only offers me a drink of water, but she offers to water our camels. Then I'll know she's the girl. Now, that's such a big deal because a camel can drink 25 gallons of water. And maybe her water jar could hold 3 gallons. So this is like hard work. She's going way above and beyond. This is off the charts hospitality. This is somebody with character who looks at life and says, when something needs done, I just do it. I don't wait for somebody else to do it. I just take care of business and I do it. That's the kind of person he's looking for. He goes to the well. A young woman gives him a drink and then she says, let me water your camels. He's like, I didn't put my hand under my master's thigh for nothing. You know, this is paying off, thankfully. And so that's the girl. And he tells her the story. He goes to her family. Again, in the ancient world, unfortunately, he had to seek male approval. Her father was dead. Like Isaac, she lost a parent. And so the servant went to her brother. And then she agreed to go. And the scripture says he put a ring in her nose, because that's what you do when you get married. You better put a ring in that girl's nose in the ancient world. And he put a ring in her nose and gave her jewelry, and she left with this entourage. And Genesis 24 says, then the servant told Isaac all he had done. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, who had passed away. So now she is coming in to be the woman of the household. And he married Rebekah, so she became his wife, and he loved her. The story of Isaac and Rebekah is a love story. These are two people who, in a sense, are meant for each other. And he's lost his mother. He's had this painful experience. He's going through grief. And this woman comes into his life, and she gives new life. And Isaac was comforted after her mother's death. Now, the biblical authors who wrote this story, it's written sparsely. It's almost poetic. Every word means something. All the names have deep meaning. What's the most painful event in Isaac's life? His dad ties him up and is holding a knife over his chest, however old he was. You know what the name Rebekah means? We have some Beccas in this church. The name Rebekah means to tie up. Isn't that interesting? Note, all the details have meanings here. And it's the root word of Rebekah is to tie up, like you would tie an animal to a post to keep the animal from getting hurt. It's to tie something up to protect it, to help it to be secure and safe. Are there people in your life who have been Rebekahs to you? And those painful experiences, some people have come along to you and they've comforted you, but in a sense they've ensnared you in a good way. And they've helped you to be secure. Another meaning is connection. She's connected to Isaac. Are there people who you just have this connection with, and they've helped you to grieve the pain of the past? And if not, we need those people. You know, if not, task number one, find those people who can be Rebekahs in your life. She represents new life and healing and new possibilities. Who are the people who have influenced your life? What are the events that have influenced your life? So when my wife and I talked about the weekend that we had, here's what she said to me. She said, you know what? It was very Rebekah-like. She said, this is our past. You know, we both get kind of accosted by people who are afraid that, seriously, they're afraid the federal government is going to come and arrest them. That's where there are people in our society right now, and that's where they are. It's full-blown apocalyptic. This is our past. This is where we come from. We can't run away from it. So what we have to do is just kind of grieve the fact that that's kind of the way it is in our relationships. But here's what we can do. We can celebrate that our son is going to have a different experience than us. And we can take joy in the fact that we're not living in fear and paranoia the way we were raised. And I'm not trying to just be judgmental. I don't want to, commit the same mistake. I'm just saying there's some things I even heard. They're pretty irrational. We don't have to live there anymore. And we can raise our son in a church where everybody's welcome, and he doesn't have to have some crisis of faith like we did in the future. And we can be really happy about that. And we can celebrate that, and we can create a better future together. Isn't my wife smart? Just what a Rebekah-like thing to say, to bring new life. And I want to close with this story. You know, a lot of folks in our culture have experienced the darker side of religion, the more divisive kind, the more separate kind. And maybe that's where some of your painful people and experiences come from. Well, back in May, we had a sermon series here called Religions of the World. And we looked at Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And for the Judaism day, we invited a rabbi. And for the Islam day, we invited an imam to come and speak. And the imam, Khalil, is going to come back on August 2nd and talk about his experience of growing up during the civil rights movement. It's going to be super interesting, inspiring. But on the day we talked about Judaism, we invited Rabbi Shmuley Yanklowitz, who is in Scottsdale, and the guy's already famous. He's like, by the way, he's like 33 years old. I don't know if you knew, he's a really young guy who's already internationally known as a rabbi. And just a couple of weeks after he spoke here, he kind of surprised everybody because he decided to donate a kidney to this guy who's a Jewish young man who had been orphaned earlier in life and had been on dialysis for something like 15 years. So there's Shmuley on the right, and there's this young man, Yossi, on the left. They'd never met. This is the first time they met in the hospital. And by the way, if you've decided to donate a kidney to a person and then you meet that person, what happens if you don't like them? You know what I mean? Like, wait a second here. But that didn't happen. So they meet in the hospital, and for the first time, and they both laid down in, the hospital beds and had this surgery where Shmuley donated a kidney to a guy he's never met. I want you to think about this guy's life. I mean, we don't know his story specifically, but somebody who's orphaned. How many painful events in the past have they stacked up? And people who are left in vulnerable positions like that often get continually abused as they grow up by predators who take advantage of people like that in that situation. Think about his life and the pain of the past. And then along comes this rabbi who says, hey man, I never met you. I got something for you. And he shares a kidney. I want to read, to close, I want to read what Shmuley wrote on his Facebook page after the surgery. Think about connection and embracing the grief of the past and creating a better, more beautiful, connected future. Shmuley wrote, the surgical team, with help from above, performed a miracle of saving a human life, and we will be enriched to feel joy and love as we witness Yossi's journey and the generations that come from him. Sounds like Abraham, doesn't it? Each stranger we pass in the street has the potential to partner to redeem us, to be redeemed, and to be redeemed through us. Each individual can be part of our spiritual story if we choose. We are all family of an interconnected human race with a shared destiny. Think about all the division and the pain that's caused. We deeply need one another. When we are asking to be happier, what we are really asking for is the capacity to become more giving and loving. We are praying for an evolved heart that can contain more. We are capable of more than self-absorption. And so we must prove David Hume wrong, that an individual cares more about the stubbing of his toe than a death on the other side of the world. In the words of the psalmist, teach me to feel joy as deeply as I feel sorrow. Teach me to love. Blessings to all.